So here we have Abraham. And the opposite of that is not of one big organism, but a split dualistic way of thinking, where there's the pure ideas up there, the macrocosm, the ideas in the mind of God, or the ideas in some world of pure ideas. And by the way, my reference here is Harry Wilson's book on Philo, which is a beautiful basic description of how this, the different levels of Platonic thinking work in Judaism. So there are four levels. There's the ideas in God, then there's the world of pure ideas, which is also somehow part of God, and then there's a break. The microcosm is where we live. So we have two levels. We have the ideas, what we call essences, our pure idea, for example, our pure idea of love, pure idea of courage, pure idea of beauty, these things, but on a human level, that's the third level down. And that's the first level of the microcosm. The second level of the microcosm is when these ideas are all messed up, our everyday level. So we have four levels, and I'm very much simplifying just to get to, so we can say something. Instead of trying to say everything about nothing, I'm going to try to say something about something here. That's why I need to break it down to some things we could talk about without diagrams and everything else. So, okay, we got this dualistic model here with four levels. You can think of it as Atzilut, the world of Atzilut, if you're at the Zohar Kabbalah, the world, ideas in the mind of God, or B'riyah, the world of pure ideas, Yitzirah, the pure ideas, but on our level, created the level of soul, creation here. And then beyond, the last level is the level of imperfection, asiyah. Think of it as those four levels as our basic thinking model here. Okay, so going to go into his book on page number 94. We have the example. So for 85, that chapter was mostly about. Oops, dropped my paper here. Mostly about Noah. And this one, 94, he starts talking about Abraham. And it's called God's World. So now, it's interesting, he uses the idea of taste. He says, Noah didn't have a taste yet of every human being. He was preoccupied with saving the world, but well, he says, a lot of people are very big on saving the world. They might not care for human beings. So he's giving the example of Noah, since he's in this system of opposites and all the time this spiral of each set of opposites giving way to another set of opposites. It's all the time in terms of types, rather than individuals. And this is a crucial point here. Abraham, in this system here, represents what a lot of philosophers would call individuality, whereas Noah in this system represents a system of types. You have the same thing, for example, in Michael Chekhov's approach to the theater acting technique. He says a bad actor plays always a type. He plays the different types of his personality, whereas a good actor knows how to go inside to get to the roots of his personality, his being, his I consciousness, his higher self, whatever you want to call it, and is freed from those types and is able to play the living reality of each moment free of those types. Doesn't mean you leave the types behind, but you're at a higher level so that you're in touch with purer ideas, and you could illuminate the junk collage, the dead forms, from this point of free spirit, you might say. So Shlomo is giving us exactly that same idea of a performer on top of his material, illuminating his junk collage, dead form, which is basically Platonic thinking of two levels, the free performer on top with his ideas from heaven or wherever, and from the here and now, the messianic now, versus the score of forms that he's performing here, which he built up out of the types that he's made out of in his life. and then illuminating somehow those dead forms with the here and now inspiration. I could illustrate that very quickly here. Let's say I want to take the idea of, hello, how are you? Hi. Now, hi, how you doing out there? Hi, hi, hi. I took this form, that's a form, and I did it the way we usually do it. We use it as part of a certain matrix of social behaviors. Hi, hi, hi. Means a certain thing. Now, if I am an actor and I want to, let's say I have this form from my collection of personal forms that I've prepared formally, then I want to use that action as part of a score in some kind of a theater piece where I'm very freely playing with my material, like a child plays with stereotypes. You know, like a kid can do a good caricature of the policeman on the corner there. Same thing here. An actor could take this form and say, what if I make this form? What if I pretend it's in water, you know? Or what if I pretend that this form is blowing in the wind somehow? Or what if I take it upside down and pretend that this form is some kind of a thing that's saying hi to somebody 1,000 miles down there, and I'm doing it through some molasses here, and I put that whole idea, then the form becomes very different. It's my hi filtered through that different way of looking at it, for the different here and now idea. So the process is very basic to human thinking, whether you are locked into your forms or whether you're on some higher level on top of the forms, dualistically speaking, like in this Platonic system of the macrocosm and the microcosm. Okay, so now, going back to Shlomo here. Okay, so that sense again, a lot of people are very big on, so to speak, saving the world. They might not care for human beings, but they sure care for the world. When God made a covenant never to destroy the world, He gave us a little taste of how much chesed He put into the world when He created it. Olam chesed yibaneh, a different kind of compassion, something much deeper. Okay, so he's talking about Noah, who likes the idea of saving the world, so he's going to make an ark, versus Abraham, who sees the whole town of Sodom over there, and he feels that rather than destroy the whole town, if we could find one real individual there that has spirituality, that person is worth somehow more than the whole category of Sodom. So somehow or other he finds Lot, and that leads to Ruth, leads to Mashiach, and that's the folklore story that justifies is individuality rather than surrendering to stereotypes of good and evil. And that makes Abraham the paradigm case of a person able to distinguish between a type and an individual. And we keep hearing the same thing over and over again here. And one way to describe it is the taste metaphor. Taste is a sense, or smell is a sense, it's holistic. Whereas I see something specific, I smell, the fragrance of the Lord or something like that, or the fragrance of the food. It's an encompassing sense. And so smell or taste are examples that Shlomo uses to illustrate the difference between individuality and a type. So human, Noah, well, here's what he says about Noah in 94. When God made a covenant never to destroy the world, He gave us a little taste of how much chesed He put into the world when He created it. That's just a little taste, okay? It's the covenant that He will allow this endless objective history, this spiral of the opposites all the time, leading to more opposites and going on and on and on. He's gonna. That's an example of a little taste of eternity. But the example, the idea of individuality, when a person, when Abraham contacts his own individuality, the deeper truth of that, and he contacts the individuality and goes beyond stereotypes with people. For example, these three guys that show up for a meal, and finds their spirituality, and he finds the spirituality of Lot there, and out of the huge pile of sinners in Sodom, whatever it is. all examples of using his holistic sense of, he smells that there's a good guy out there, you know, you can taste it, you can smell it. And that's the difference here on that level. And another example that Shlomo gives, only when you see them. A lot of people have compassion with other people, but only when they see them, and that's the awareness level. But he gives an example of himself, what he'd like to do, or what Abraham would like to do. Abraham is waiting on a street corner looking for the next schnorrer to go by so he can invite him to his house. That's an example of somehow or other going beyond the need to just see the person and to size him up. Is this a good guy or not good a guy? You know, is this guy going to make a mess out of my house? Is this guy going to eat me out of house and home? Whatever it is. Rather, he just invites the guy because he has this need coming from the void, this infinite need to embody this total chesed, this total grace. Okay, so now philosophically, how do we represent that? If we represent the Aristotle model with the spiral, so we have the Plato model with the four levels, with the two worlds separated by a gap to the other two worlds. You know, we have Asiya, Yetzirah, and then we have a gap, and then we have Bariya, and we have Atzilut, the four levels there. Okay. All right, so here's how Shlomo summarizes that idea of this other kind of covenant. When Abraham entered the covenant with God, in other words, different than Noah's covenant, he was mamish so filled with God, God shined into him so much that he had a taste, and there's that magical word, taste, holistic experience. His nose somehow told him how much God wanted to give when he created the world. So I want to do the same. I don't want to be at a level where I need to see a poor schlepper to excite me, to give me compassion. I want to be out there looking for the poor man, okay? He wants to be looking for the poor man. Now, philosophically, that's the idea of this enormous need to be looking for something that's missing is a metaphorical, a poetic way of talking about what philosophically, kabbalistically would be the concept of tzimtzum, that just like in the model we had with the Aristotelian model where we have two opposites and then somehow you got to go inside to find the new idea, here the two opposites are so extreme, totally opposite, that there's no possible way that they could possibly come together. And the person is in that situation of being, here I am in a microcosm, and somehow what I need to get to, what I'm longing for, is the next level up. I'm in Yetzirah, Asiyah, and I need to get to Bariya. I have no way to get there. I have no techniques to do that. There's no system. It's not an organism. It's just a total opposite, otherness. The only way to get there is like all the pietists, religious people would say, is with a leap of faith. Okay, leap of faith. You somehow jump out of your skin, and that's the idea of going beyond yourself. Grotowski theater, they used to say, tell the actors, go beyond yourself. You know, by the way, Grotowski was in the physical theater world of the 70s that I was involved in a little bit. You know, they used to tell the actor, you know, here you are, practically dying there from physical exertion and emotional stress in this workshop for 10 days, like I went through once. And meanwhile, the director's saying, now go across yourself, in kind of Polish English, you know. So what are they talking about? It's the same idea, that there's somehow this pure idea that's waiting for you on the level of Bria is waiting there, but you got to push yourself from the level of the first two worlds to get to that, to your breaking point. So you have the idea of the negation of the negation, the two opposites. Each of these opposites is a negation of the oneness, and you got to negate those negations, the death of ego, you know, to get to that void, so that you can discover who your new self is. Since you only know once you get there, all right. Okay. So you have a taste, you have a sense that there's something waiting for you there, and it's the taste metaphor is lovely. I see it. If I keep going like this video is going to take about 10 hours. I don't know where I'll go with this. but I'll just try to keep going here. Another example we have here is, Abraham being tested by the three angels. Now, philosophically speaking, I ask myself, obviously, it just happened to be three, why three? But if you think of the basic principles of dialectical thinking, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and if we talk about the idea of Platonic anamnesis, not, and is not, and amnesis is forgetting, not forgetting, in other words, going back to your origin, looking for the pure ideas that make you up in your life, and that's another way of talking about this process of dialectical thinking, where you suffer the opposites of being reborn and all that stuff. If you think of it that way, so these guys that showed up, the three guys, are reminding him about, or somehow teaching him about this idea of Platonic philosophy, that there's this dialectic that you need to suffer, which is a dualistic dialectic. Okay, so that's why I think there are three guys, but whatever the reasons you think, that's up to you, all right? Okay, so these angels are what's called a test. So Shlomo wants to say that what distinguishes the Noach dialectic, the Aristotelian situation, from the Abraham Avinu dialectic is the fact that there's a test there. A test is another way of talking about this process of tzimtzum. Tzimtzum meaning tzimtzem, to contract, to narrow, to tzamtzem in Hebrew. You narrow your ego, you negate your negations, and that's one of these things where you have these extreme opposites and you don't know what the heck to do, so you're being tested by God. So here is, Shlomo wants to point out that these goyim, three goyim are showing up, and he has to decide whether to admit these guys. Here he just became a new Jew, and he has to invite people because that's his dialectic. He has this enormous gap there. He's got to feed the world, do chesed for the world. And all of a sudden, three of the wrong people show up. They happen to be goyim, but they have to be goyim because he's the only Jew in the world at that point. So he has a conflict: should I invite him in? I shouldn't invite him in. If he didn't invite him in, then like Shlomo points out, he wouldn't know about his son. He wouldn't know that there would never be any Mashiach and all this stuff. And the whole Jewish people, it wouldn't be Yitzchak. So he has to invite him in, and then he has this suffering, this test. So logically speaking, it's a moment of tzimtzum. Existentially, personally speaking, he's sweating it out. Okay, so again, I'm focusing here on the logic rather than the emotional stuff that people, usual followers of Shlomo or Carlebach, find more interesting. Where are we? So Shlomo, in that section, this is 116, by the way, points out that here's an example where you have to get closer to people in order to get closer to yourself in order to get closer to God. Because the more you allow yourself to be negated as an individual, and the more you will the less you will have your ego standing in the way as a strong opposition between you and other people, and the more you will be allowing yourself to move up to the higher level of the pure ideas in the mind of God and all that stuff, and have these ideas affect you. Okay.